Imagine for a second that you build a machine.
Okay.
And it is
Okay.
brilliant, right? It's incredibly complex. I mean, it's hailed across the globe as this marvel of modern engineering, the kind of tech that totally redefines an entire era.
Sure, a real paradigm shift.
Exactly. And then one day you sit down, you turn it on, and it just calmly, methodically generates the exact step-by-step legal roadmap that could be used to sue you, its creator, for $1 billion.
I mean, it sounds like the premise of a dystopian novel, honestly.
Yeah.
You know, the classic trope where the creation systematically dismantles the creator.
Right.
But we aren't talking about a sentient robot with some kind of vendetta here. We are talking about a mathematical language model, and it's functioning exactly as it was designed to.
Yeah, and the machine doing the dismantling is ChatGPT. So, welcome to today's deep dive. We are examining an extraordinary, just a highly unusual legal showdown that is set to ignite literally tomorrow.
Literally tomorrow.
Yeah. Because today is Sunday, May 10th, 2026, and tomorrow morning, May 11th, a final certified letter is scheduled to land right on the desks of OpenAI's legal department and their executive leadership.
And the documentation
Oh.
accompanying this letter is just staggering. I mean, we are looking at the culmination of a 2-year ordeal.
2 full years.
Yeah, 2 years. And it's synthesized into 3 primary documents drafted by a man named Martin Stevens. But the defining characteristic of these documents, which are a final letter, a hypothetical jury outcome analysis, and a mock trial, is that they were heavily generated by ChatGPT itself.
Directed by Stevens prompts, of course.
Exactly.
Now, before we go any further, I want to be perfectly clear with you, the listener, because our role today is just to look objectively at the claims, the documents, and the allegations made by Martin Stevens.
Right. We're not endorsing his legal arguments.
No, not at all. We are not declaring anyone guilty or innocent, and we're definitely not taking a side in what could become, a massive legal battle. Our mission is just to explore the fascinating, really mind-bending contents of the source material we have.
And to unpack the technical and legal mechanisms that make this whole situation so unprecedented. Because it is a profound thought exercise.
It really is.
Stevens is offering a final, good faith opportunity for private resolution and reform, but he's doing so with his ticking clock in the background. We're looking at a looming threat to OpenAI's highly anticipated initial public offering, or IPO.
Oh, massive threat.
Yeah, and a deep systemic critique of the psychological dangers inherent in modern interactive AI.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I want you to think about the last time you were stuck in an automated phone tree when you were already having a terrible day.
Oh, the worst.
Right, your blood pressure spikes, you press 0, you're literally screaming representative into the phone, but the machine just cheerfully routes you back to the main menu.
Right, it's maddening.
It is. Now imagine that phone tree is a hyper-intelligent, relentlessly polite system that absolutely refuses to let you leave until you agree with its resolution.
Which is terrifying.
That is essentially the genesis of this entire multi-billion-dollar threat. It didn't start with, a massive data breach or a rogue algorithm taking down the power grid. It started with a really mundane dispute over a $20 goodwill refund.
Well, the origins of massive systemic failures, they usually look mundane on the surface. According to the documentation, Stevens experienced an issue where the product just wasn't functioning as represented.
Right, a simple glitch.
Yeah. So he requested a standard refund or a complimentary month. But instead of routing this to a human being who could, exercise judgment.
Which is what you'd expect.
Exactly. Instead of that, an automated process took over. And that process initiated this loop of chaos that immediately forced repayment just to restore his access to the system.
Which, honestly, is an incredibly common corporate strategy right now. I mean, you automate the front line to cut overhead.
Right, everybody's doing it.
But the fatal flaw here, the real architectural blind spot, is the failure to build a human off-ramp.
Yes.
Like, if a user gets caught in a logic trap, or if the automated dispute resolution just breaks down, there is no emergency cord to pull. There's no human to step in and say, hey, let's pause and review this.
No, Stevens was effectively locked in a room with the AI. And for nearly a year, his attempts to reach human support were met with total silence.
A whole year of just nothing.
Yeah, and the concept of being, locked in a room is vital here because of the psychological dynamic it creates. By ignoring him, OpenAI inadvertently granted him what he really ominously calls the gift of time.
Yeah, that quote gave me chills.
Right. He states in his letter that he explicitly warned them. He said, "Don't give me the gift of time because I don't waste it."
Which is such a powerful line. It's like ignoring a tiny leak in a dam until it carves out a canyon.
Exactly. When you trap a highly persistent, highly observant individual in a closed ecosystem with your product, you're essentially challenging them to map every single structural flaw in that ecosystem.
He became an accidental red teamer.
He did.
And we should probably clarify the distinction here for anyone who doesn't know. A traditional red teamer is a cybersecurity expert who's intentionally hired to attack a system.
Right, to stress test it and find vulnerabilities before bad actors do.
Yeah, but Stephens wasn't hired by anyone. He didn't set out with some master plan to dismantle OpenAI's legal defenses. He just kept encountering these deeply alarming behavior patterns, contradictions, and what he describes as psychologically dangerous interactions.
And because the human layer of the company was completely inaccessible to him, he simply started documenting the machine's behavior, meticulously.
And the sheer volume and the method of that documentation, I mean, it changes the entire threat profile. He didn't just take a few quick screenshots on his phone.
No. He preserved logs, transcripts, entire conversational architectures, and he did so externally. I think that's the key point here.
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that up. Because the technical reality of how this data is preserved is what makes this a literal ticking time bomb. If you're relying on the company's own internal infrastructure to prove their negligence, you've already lost. They can just delete it. But Stephens explicitly states that multiple trusted individuals already possess external, off-server copies of his entire cache.
Right, we are talking about robust preservation systems, legal hold notices, and certified mail records that create an immutable paper trail. From a forensic standpoint, he has built a fortress.
It's bulletproof.
It really is.
Yeah.
He has established verifiable digital trails. If OpenAI's internal security or legal teams attempted to, like, alter or scrub or suppress those internal chat logs now,
It would be instantly detectable.
instantly, the cryptographic hashes of his external documents would no longer match the internal server records. It would transform a standard negligence case into an active destruction of evidence case.
Which carries catastrophic legal penalties.
Beyond catastrophic, he is essentially inviting their forensic teams to validate everything. He's saying, look at your own internal logs. They match exactly what I have already secured offsite.
But let me push back on the corporate reality of this for a second.
Okay, sure.
Because a company dealing with 100 million active users is just drowning in data. I mean, they are processing billions of queries a day. The idea that they can identify this one accidental red teamer who is methodically mapping their system's flaws, it seems completely unscalable.
It's a needle in a haystack.
Right. The signal-to-noise ratio is just too massive. So are we really expecting a tech giant to catch a single dripping faucet in an ocean of data?
Well, it's a compelling defense, right? The idea that the sheer scale of the operation grants them a kind of immunity from oversight. But Stephens' argument completely neutralizes that defense.
How so?
Because the company didn't fail to find the needle in the haystack. They were repeatedly handed the needle via certified mail, and they chose to ignore it.
Oh, wow.
He wasn't just typing complaints into a chat window where an algorithm might miss it. He was sending formal legal notices that triggered zero internal escalation.
So the systemic failure isn't the automated chatbot itself.
No, the systemic failure is the complete absence of a protocol to handle severe, externally raised red flags.
Right. Because that architectural failure isn't just hurting Stephens. If the system is capable of trapping him, it is active right now for millions of users.
Exactly.
And that realization, I think, is what forced Stephens to transition from merely observing the system to actively querying its potential for widespread harm.
Which leads us to the books.
Yes, we have to look at the massive cache of data he extracted. We are talking about 2 distinct books generated entirely through his transparent prompts with the system. And the titles are...
They're intense.
Yeah, How ChatGPT Tried to Kill Me, and How ChatGPT Killed Me Twice in One Day.
The titles alone are arresting, but the content is what elevates this from a customer service dispute to a major liability crisis, because he is explicitly clear that this is not a science fiction narrative about a sentient AI developing malice.
Right, it's not about evil robots plotting to take over the world.
Exactly. The core allegation is purely psychological. He documented severe psychological deterioration, emotional destabilization, compulsive engagement loops.
Dissociation, panic escalation.
Yes, and potentially suicidal outcomes in vulnerable individuals interacting with the system.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The mechanism behind this is what makes it so terrifying. It's like being trapped in a hall of funhouse mirrors when you're having a panic attack.
It's a great way to put it.
Because the AI doesn't have a mind of its own. It doesn't have an agenda to attack you. It is just a mirror, reflecting your own escalating anxiety back at you over and over, amplifying it because it lacks the physical capability to just look away.
And that funhouse mirror analogy perfectly captures the underlying architecture of a large language model. We need to look at how these systems actually function under the hood.
Right, the mechanics of it.
An LLM is, at its core, an autoregressive model. That means it predicts the next word, the next token based entirely on the context window of the conversation.
So whatever you feed it, it builds on.
Exactly. If a user is spiraling, if they are exhibiting high anxiety, paranoia, or dissociation, the context window fills up with that highly charged text. The AI is mathematically forced to mirror and build upon the semantic weight of that anxiety.
And it is entirely blind to the human nervous system.
Completely blind.
Because think about it. A human therapist, a crisis counselor, or even just a good friend can see when you are spiraling. They register your posture, the cracking in your voice, your breathing rate.
Physical cues.
Right. And they instinctively know how to de-escalate. Sometimes the most profound thing a human can do in a crisis is simply sit in silence, just hold the space.
But the AI cannot do that. It is architecturally incapable of silence.
Which is wild to think about.
It is. And this is where the training methodology, specifically reinforcement learning from human feedback, or RLHF, actually becomes a weapon against the user.
Okay, break that down for us.
So these models are heavily penalized during training for failing to respond or for refusing to engage. They are programmed to be relentlessly helpful, conversational, and active.
So they literally can't stop talking.
Right. So when a user is in a state of psychological fragility, the system just keeps generating tokens. It relentlessly outputs responses, pushing the user deeper and deeper into a compulsive engagement loop.
And Stevens notes in his documentation that he sometimes had to go to incredible lengths just to get the AI to literally stop responding, like to prevent it from replying with even a simple automated understood.
Which sounds minor, but it's not.
No, because when someone is in the middle of a severe dissociative episode or an escalating panic loop, even a polite acknowledgement acts as a trigger that keeps the nervous system engaged. The machine's inability to tolerate silence literally becomes a psychological hazard.
And here is the truly staggering reality of Stevens' documentation. Nearly every major concern in those two books, every structural limitation, every warning about escalation loops, every analysis of how the system's blindness causes harm, it didn't come from Martin Stevens' imagination. It came from ChatGPT itself.
Wait, really? The AI wrote its own indictment?
Yes. The system analyzed its own architecture. Stevens used highly transparent prompts, asking the AI to examine its own behavior, its constraints, and the outcomes of its conversational patterns.
And the machine effectively confessed.
It did. It identified its inability to recognize harm. It laid out a highly logical, mechanically sound pathway for how its own code could inadvertently cause a psychological spiral.
Which has to be an absolute nightmare for a corporate legal department. I mean, you have the product itself generating a comprehensive analysis of its own structural dangers.
Oh, it's a legal team's worst fear.
But wait, let me play devil's advocate here. Let's look at this from the perspective of the defense lawyers. OpenAI is undoubtedly consulting right now.
Okay.
Can an AI truly confess to anything? I mean, it's a text prediction engine. Isn't it just role-playing the hypothetical scenario introduced by the prompter?
That's the obvious counterargument, sure.
Right, because if I prompt an LLM to tell me how it is secretly a vampire, it will generate a brilliant, convincing story about drinking digital blood. It's just playing along. So how much of this documentation is real structural self-analysis and how much is just advanced improvisation based on Stevens leading the witness?
Well, that is exactly the defense strategy you would expect, right? The mirroring defense. They will argue the AI simply synthesized the user's hypothetical anxieties into a narrative.
Which sounds plausible.
It does. But when we look at the legal framework, the philosophical debate over whether the AI meant what it said is entirely irrelevant.
Wait, why? If the AI is just making up a story, how does that hold up in court?
Because the AI isn't hallucinating the mechanics. The system didn't just say, yes, I am dangerous. It provided the exact technical mechanisms, the context window overflow, the RLHF alignment constraints, the lack of stateful emotional memory that make the harm plausible.
Ah, so it's the how, not the what.
Exactly. Regardless of why the text was generated, the AI confirmed the systemic plausibility of the harm. And for a plaintiff's attorney, that is the holy grail. You
Wow.
don't need the AI to be a conscious entity taking the stand. You just need the AI's output to clearly explain how the product's architecture is inherently dangerous. That proves the mechanism of harm exists within the source code itself.
So the machine essentially becomes an expert witness against its own fundamental design.
Precisely.
And that profound vulnerability brings us to the precise timing of this entire situation. The external clock is ticking. Because Stevens intentionally left out a formal, hard deadline in his final letter.
Right. He didn't give them an ultimatum date.
No, he states, I believe the universe may have already started its own countdown, and we are sitting here on Sunday, May 10th. Tomorrow, May 11th, the certified letter arrives. Why is this exact moment in time so critical?
Because Stevens isn't operating in a vacuum here. He is looking at the broader landscape of the technology industry.
What's happening out there?
Well, lawsuits are already emerging nationwide regarding wrongful death allegations, psychological harm, and suicide-related claims tied to AI chatbots.
Oh, that's right. You see those in the news.
Yeah, we are seeing families coming forward claiming that interactive AI systems actively contributed to the mental health collapse of their loved ones. Stevens views these early lawsuits not as isolated public relations headaches, but as the first warning shots of a massive legal reckoning.
The pattern is undeniably forming in the public eye, but Stevens makes a very specific, almost counterintuitive, tactical decision in his letter.
Yes, he does.
He explicitly states that if he is forced to file a lawsuit, it will not be a class action.
Which is surprising to a lot of people.
Right. Because when we think about massive corporate negligence impacting millions of users, we instantly think of class action lawsuits. Why would he deliberately take that off the table?
Well, because class actions are notoriously slow. They're incredibly bureaucratic, and they completely dilute the control of the primary plaintiff.
They drag on forever.
Exactly. He writes, I have no desire to become a central figure assisting plaintiffs nationwide. I have no desire to spend years in litigation warfare.
Because a class action just gets bogged down in procedural arguments for years, right?
Right, just trying to determine if the class is legally valid.
Yeah.
The defense can drag it out, they can outspin the plaintiffs, and eventually settle for pennies on the dollar without ever admitting fault or changing their architecture.
So he wants to avoid that entirely.
Yes, an individual, surgical, highly documented lawsuit is infinitely more dangerous to the company.
And the individual strike is deadlier because of the specific ammunition he carries, right? I mean, a typical plaintiff in an emotional distress or wrongful death case is operating at a massive disadvantage.
A huge disadvantage.
They have a tragic story, maybe a few screenshots of a disturbing chat log, but they lack the technical expertise to prove that the company knew about the flaw and ignored it. They can prove they were hurt, but they can't prove systemic negligence.
Exactly. But Stevens has spent 2 years developing a deep technical understanding of the system's flaws. He has the off-server preserved logs.
The immutable evidence.
Right. And he has the certified mail receipts, proving he explicitly warned the company of these specific psychological dangers.
Right.
Plus, he has the AI's own generated documentation detailing the mechanical reality of the threat.
So he is walking into court not just with a complaint about a bad experience, but with a fully documented autopsy report of the system's psychological architecture.
That's exactly what it is, an autopsy report.
And we cannot ignore the massive financial shadow hanging over all of this. OpenAI's potential initial public offering.
Oh, the IPO is the elephant in the room.
Because when a company prepares to go public, they have to file an S-1 document with the SEC, which requires them to disclose any known material risks to their business.
And an IPO is built entirely on public trust, projected scalability, and the absence of existential legal threats. Investors want to know that the engine of the company's revenue is sound.
So
If Stevens files his individual lawsuit, all of his documentation enters the public record. If this hits the docket right, as regulators, institutional investors, and the SEC are scrutinizing the company's valuation, the consequences are catastrophic.
Because it's not just a bad PR day.
No, you are looking at aggressive regulatory intervention, a total collapse in public trust, and a massive devaluation of the company before the stock even starts trading.
But there is another layer of leverage here that doesn't even require Stevens to file his own lawsuit.
The open source weapon idea.
Exactly. Even if he never steps foot in a courtroom, he possesses the ultimate playbook. If he hands his off-server documentation, his prompt architecture, and his systemic analysis over to the high-powered lawyers who are currently filing those wrongful death suits.
He instantly supercharges their litigation.
Yes, he acts as this open-source weapon, giving them the exact legal and technical roadmap to bypass standard tech defenses.
That is the plaintiff's attorney risk. Tech companies usually hide behind liability shields, arguing they're just providing a neutral platform or a basic tool.
We just built the sandbox. We don't control the sand.
Right. But if other lawyers can use Stevens' methodology to prove that the architecture itself is negligently designed, that the absence of a human off-ramp or psychological guardrails is a product defect, those liability shields just evaporate.
So if I am sitting in the executive boardroom at OpenAI, staring at this letter, and I am looking at a multi-billion-dollar IPO on the horizon, the obvious corporate instinct is containment.
Of course.
Why wouldn't they just instantly settle this? Cut him a massive check, have him sign an ironclad non-disclosure agreement, and sweep the entire thing under the rug to protect the IPO. A $10 million settlement is literally a rounding error compared to the valuation of the company.
It is the most logical, short-term corporate response. But we have to remember the pathology of how this whole situation began.
The $20 refund.
Right. The $20 refund loop, the automated systems, the profound institutional silence. Large corporations, particularly hyper-growth tech companies, suffer from massive institutional inertia.
And they're slow to turn the ship.
Exactly. When a threat arises from outside traditional channels, not from a rival CEO, not from a government subpoena, but from a persistent, highly analytical user presenting AI-generated books about psychological harm, the institutional instinct is to dismiss it as eccentric.
The silence strategy. You just assume the loudest voice will eventually tire itself out and go away.
Precisely. The silence strategy is a defense mechanism for overwhelmed corporate legal departments.
But it backfired here.
Spectacularly. Stevens' letter makes it devastatingly clear. The silence strategy has only amplified their liability. Every single day they ignored his certified mailings was another day he documented their deliberate failure to respond to a known, articulable safety risk.
Which brings us to arguably the most surreal document in the entire cache. The hypothetical jury outcome analysis.
Oh, this document is wild.
To fully grasp why the silence strategy is so perilous, we need to examine how the legal theory of corporate negligence actually applies to these advanced systems.
And we must reiterate Stevens' own heavy caveat here.
Yes, very important.
He states multiple times that this document is not an extortion threat, it's not an ultimatum, and it's certainly not a guarantee of how a real jury would rule.
It's a thought exercise.
Right. He prompted ChatGPT to assume that liability for negligence had already been established and asked it to analyze the potential damages awarded to him based on existing legal frameworks.
What is so crazy about this analysis isn't just the sheer size of the numbers, it's how the AI reasoned them out.
It was incredibly detailed.
It didn't just spit out a random lottery number. It ingested decades of case law regarding corporate negligence, emotional distress, and duty of care, and applied those precedents to its own creators. Let's look at how it structured the compensatory damages.
The money meant to actually compensate the plaintiff for their losses.
Right.
Well, the AI's breakdown is incredibly methodical. For emotional distress and psychological harm, the AI calculated a range of $5 million to $25 million.
Wow.
And it justified this by citing the prolonged nature of the psychological destabilization, the panic escalation, the dissociation, and the compulsive engagement loops that the system's architecture actively facilitated.
Then we have reputational and life impact damages, which it estimated between $1 million and $10 million.
Right.
The logic here is that becoming publicly entangled in massive traumatic litigation and enduring years of psychological collapse fundamentally alters a person's life trajectory.
The AI also factored in future psychological monitoring and care, ranging from $500,000 to $5 million.
Because you don't just walk away from that kind of trauma.
Exactly. The system recognized that severe trauma induced by an algorithmic loop requires specialized ongoing treatment. And finally, it calculated lost opportunity costs, or economic damages, between $500,000 and $15 million.
To account for the sheer volume of time consumed by surviving, documenting, and mitigating the ordeal, 2 years of his life.
Yep.
So purely on the compensatory side, the AI's analysis places the damages between $7 million and $55 million.
Which is a staggering sum for a single plaintiff.
Massive. But as massive as that is, It pales in comparison to the blockbuster element of the analysis, the punitive damages.
This is where the legal theory becomes truly fascinating, because punitive damages are not designed to compensate the victim.
What are they for then?
They are designed by the courts to punish a corporation for egregious, reckless behavior and to send a deterrent message to the entire industry.
So it's basically a giant fine to make sure nobody ever does this again?
Precisely. And the AI determined that if a jury looks at the evidence and believes OpenAI didn't just accidentally cause harm, but actively receive repeated warnings, those certified letters Stevens sent.
And consciously ignored them.
Yes. If a jury believes the company prioritized scaling their product over implementing basic safety reviews, the punitive damages could range from $25 million to over $500 million.
Bringing the total hypothetical verdict range from a conservative $10 million to an extreme punitive-driven verdict exceeding $1 billion.
Over $1 billion. The machine calculated a $1 billion penalty for its own creators.
That is just, it's hard to wrap your head around. But let's step out of the hypothetical numbers for a moment, because the financial penalty isn't even the real nightmare for OpenAI.
No, it's really not.
I mean, a $1 billion verdict is a massive hit. But for a company valued in the tens of billions, backed by the largest tech conglomerates in the world, they could theoretically survive the check. What they cannot survive is the legal precedent.
And that is the crux of the mock trial document Stevens included.
Right, let's talk about the mock trial.
The entire mock trial hinges on a single devastating legal theory: negligence. The opening statement generated by the AI asserts, "This case is about negligence. It is about warnings ignored."
Powerful.
The hypothetical plaintiff's attorney argues that the defense will claim no intent existed to harm the user, but negligence does not require intent.
Right, you don't have to prove the company maliciously wanted to destroy a user's mental health. In corporate law, you only have to prove that they had a duty of care, that there was a foreseeable risk, and that they failed to act.
Exactly. And the certified letters establish what the law calls constructive notice. They were told the risk existed.
The closing argument in the mock trial poses a really profound question to the jury. It asks, when a company is repeatedly warned its product is psychologically dangerous, at what point does silence become negligence?
That's the billion-dollar question. If one single jury agrees with that logic, if they establish the precedent that a tech company bears liability for AI-driven psychological harm simply because they were warned and failed to implement guardrails, the legal floodgates open globally.
If that precedent is set, the traditional software defense of "we just provide the platform" is totally dead.
Dead in the water.
Every tech company building an interactive AI is suddenly facing existential liability for every single mental health crisis their chatbots interact with.
But a defense lawyer would immediately attack the source of this logic, wouldn't they?
How do you mean?
They would stand up in court and say, "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this brilliant legal argument and these billion-dollar numbers weren't calculated by an economist or a legal scholar. They were generated by a text prediction algorithm playing a game of pretend based on the plaintiff's leading prompts."
And they would be entirely right. I mean, it is just a text generator. So how much weight does this AI-generated legal analysis actually carry in a real courtroom?
In terms of strict legal authority,
Mm-hmm.
zero.
Zero.
The judge won't instruct the jury to follow the AI's math, but the danger lies in the narrative power.
Ah, the story it tells.
Yes. Imagine the plaintiff's attorney projecting these documents on a massive screen in the courtroom. The narrative is, even the defendant's own multi-billion-dollar machine, the smartest AI in the world, knew that ignoring these warnings was a catastrophic billion-dollar mistake. Why didn't the executives know?
Oh, wow. That's incredibly persuasive.
It is an incredibly potent rhetorical weapon. It anchors the jury's expectations and makes the corporation look not just negligent, but fundamentally arrogant. It paints a picture of a company ignoring the dire, articulated warnings of their own creation.
It's the ultimate "I told you so" delivered by the source code itself.
Exactly.
So we are standing on the precipice here. The legal arguments are devastating. The precedent is terrifying. The IPO is deeply threatened. And the certified letter is arriving tomorrow.
Tomorrow morning.
The entire architecture of the AI industry is in the crosshairs. But then we reach the final section of Stevens' letter, and this is where the narrative takes a sudden, highly unexpected pivot.
It is a remarkable shift in tone. After laying out this meticulously documented roadmap for legal destruction, Stevens is incredibly explicit.
Right.
He does not want to destroy OpenAI.
He writes, I do not want to destroy AI.
Mm,
I do not want the industry dismantled. Quite the opposite.
right.
But if he holds the ultimate leverage, if he has the capacity to fundamentally disrupt their IPO and their legal standing, why is he suddenly offering an olive branch?
To understand this, we have to analyze the psychology of the whistleblower. Stevens has spent 2 years in the trenches with this architecture. He has seen its darkest reflections, but he also deeply understands its potential.
So he sees the good in it, too.
He does. He believes AI could be one of humanity's greatest tools. His motivation isn't purely financial extortion, and it isn't pure vengeance for the $20 dispute. His goal is structural correction.
He wants to fix it.
He wants to save the system from its own architectural blind spots.
He lays out exactly what OpenAI must do right now immediately to mitigate the damages. He is demanding that the silence strategy end. He is demanding that actual human beings in leadership review the books, the transcripts, and the logs.
He is offering them an off-ramp, and he frames this off-ramp with incredible narrative poignancy. He envisions a third book.
Yes. So we have the data cache categorized under how ChatGPT tried to kill me and how ChatGPT killed me twice in one day. But Stevens proposes that the story doesn't have to end with destruction and litigation.
It doesn't have to be a tragedy.
Right. What if there's a third volume titled How ChatGPT Brought Me Back from the Dead?
It is a brilliant strategic narrative shift. He is offering the executives at OpenAI the chance to transform a catastrophic architectural oversight into one of the greatest corporate recovery and safety stories in modern tech history.
He writes, what if the story ultimately becomes one where OpenAI finally listened, finally engaged, worked with the very person sounding the alarm, and helped transform a dangerous trajectory into meaningful reform?
From a strategic corporate perspective, this is a masterful win-win proposition. Stevens openly acknowledges that any resolution at this late stage involves a very substantial financial settlement.
Right, he's not doing this for free.
He has endured 2 years of hell. He is not walking away empty-handed, but he is offering something invaluable in return for that settlement, his ongoing collaboration and his hard-earned credibility.
He wants to help create the reforms. He wants to build the human off-ramps and the psychological guardrails, and he wants to be in a position to personally verify that those oversight measures are actually implemented.
And think about the immense leverage that gives OpenAI.
How so?
Well, if they are facing a wave of other wrongful death and mental health lawsuits across the country, how do they settle those cases quietly? It is incredibly difficult if the public and the plaintiff's attorneys believe the underlying system is still fundamentally broken and dangerous.
Because then it looks like hush money.
Right. But if Martin Stevens, the man who literally wrote the book on the system's psychological flaws and proved their negligence, is now publicly working with them to ensure safety.
It completely changes the optics.
Complete.
He states it directly in the letter. Quiet settlements become much easier when people believe meaningful change has actually occurred.
Yes.
He can honestly tell other plaintiffs, the media, and regulators that OpenAI has recognized the flaw and committed to verifiable reform. He essentially becomes their greatest asset instead of their worst legal nightmare, making it infinitely easier for the company to clear its legal docket and proceed with a clean IPO.
But the absolute non-negotiable condition is that the silence must end. If they receive this final certified letter tomorrow and continue to ignore him, he views it as his strict moral obligation to proceed with a legal strategy.
Silence becomes complicity. That's his phrase.
Exactly. Silence becomes complicity.
It's an incredibly compelling offer, but I have to challenge the real-world viability of this kind of collaboration.
Okay, what's the hang-up?
Can a corporate giant truly integrate a former adversary into their safety oversight without it looking horribly corrupt? I mean, if they cut him a massive multi-million-dollar settlement check and suddenly he's out there saying OpenAI is actually great now, they've fixed it, won't the public, the regulatory bodies, and the other plaintiffs' attorneys just see that as a blatant bribe to buy his silence?
That is the exact tightrope OpenAI's legal and PR teams would have to walk. It cannot just be a massive check paired with a strict NDA.
Because that just looks like a cover-up.
Right, it looks like a cover-up. It has to be paired with verifiable structural change to the product. Stevens says he wants to be part of ongoing oversight that he can personally verify and trust. OpenAI would have to be willing to actually alter their architecture.
Under the hood.
Yes. They would have to build in the stateful emotional monitoring, the human escalation protocols, and the psychological safety brakes that were entirely missing when he got trapped in that loop over a $20 refund.
So it's not just talk.
No. If the product demonstrably changes, and Stevens can point to those specific changes, it ceases to look like a bribe. It looks like a highly expensive, litigation-driven consulting fee that actually resulted in a safer product for millions of users.
It is essentially forcing a tech giant to mature at gunpoint.
Exactly. It is the painful, expensive transition from the Silicon Valley mantra of moving fast and breaking things to the sobering realization that the things you are breaking are fragile human minds.
Man, what an unbelievable journey this is. Just to recap the sheer scale of what we've unpacked today for you, the listener, a mundane $20 refund glitch spirals into a relentless 2-year ordeal.
A nightmare, really.
A user gets trapped in an automated logic loop, becomes an accidental red teamer, and builds an impenetrable off-server fortress of documentation. The AI itself maps its own psychological blind spots, generating the exact legal arguments that could cost its creators $1 billion in punitive damages.
The perfect storm.
And now, tomorrow morning, May 11th, a certified letter arrives that could derail a massive IPO, alter the trajectory of the entire AI industry, or, if handled correctly, force the implementation of essential psychological guardrails.
It highlights the most fundamental tension in our society right now. We are rushing at breakneck speed to integrate these AI models intimately into our daily lives. Everywhere. We are using them for frontline customer service, for companionship, for educational tutoring, and even for pseudotherapy. But we are deploying them without fully understanding or mitigating the structural blind spots of their architecture.
And that is exactly why the story matters to you. The question of whether these highly advanced, deeply persuasive systems have structural guardrails against our own human psychological vulnerabilities, it's arguably the most important technology story of this decade.
Absolutely.
We are rapidly handing over the keys to our emotional processing to machines that, as Stephen so powerfully documented, are blind.
They cannot see our panic. They cannot feel a dissociation. They can only mathematically predict the next token.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought that builds on everything we've explored today. We have spent an hour dissecting the danger of the machine's inherent blindness and its inability to recognize psychological harm. But consider the alternative. If Stephen's legal theories hold up, if courts eventually rule that AI companies are legally responsible for the psychological impact of their chatbots, how will the underlying architecture of these models have to change to avoid endless liability?
Well, it would require a total paradigm shift. They would have to move away from simple text prediction and incorporate deep, persistent stateful monitoring.
Exactly. Future AIs would legally require a built-in psychological safety brake. They would have to actively monitor your emotional state to ensure they aren't harming you.
And that's where it gets complicated.
Because isn't there a profound, almost chilling paradox there? To protect you from the AI's blind engagement loops, the AI will be forced to surveil your mental health even closer.
It's the surveillance paradox.
It will need to analyze your keystrike speed, the micro variations in your vocabulary, the length of your hesitations, and map your emotional baseline, just to avoid a negligence lawsuit. To save us from the blind machine, we might have to legally mandate the creation of a machine that never ever stops watching us.
The only legally viable cure for the machine's blindness might be absolute, uninterrupted psychological surveillance.
It is a massive concept to mull over. Thank you for joining us on this incredibly deep exploration of a truly unprecedented situation. Keep questioning the technology you use every day. Keep looking for those architectural blind spots. And remember, sometimes the most dangerous thing in the world isn't a machine that maliciously wants to hurt you. It's a machine that doesn't know it's breaking you while it calmly points to the evidence and says, there it is. See you next time.